Welcome everyone to the Dan Gomer Show. Mr. Kerry, welcome to the Dan Gomer Show. So we're going to jump right into it with your first question. What is the best opening sentence in a book of all time, in your opinion?
Okay, so my favorite is from George Orwell's 1984, and it goes like, it was a bright, cold April day, and the clock struck 13.
Perfect. Why do you like that line?
Well, because it gives you a foreshadowing that, wait a minute, something's off here. And,
Right.
so you know that it's not going to be just a straightforward narrative, that there's a little bit more to it.
Yeah, right on. Perfect. All right, so now it's your chance. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. What is the best opening line for a book ever, right? We kind of talked about, there's the ones that you've all heard of. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, all of that. I'd love to hear some of your favorite opening lines for books of all time. If you're new to the show, if you wouldn't mind typing new in the bottom, or if you've been here before, type watch. Watched.
And they get bonus points if it's a line from one of my books, correct?
Oh, that's right. That's right. Bonus points. Heaven Ride. Boom! Right here. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So, Kerry Gleason is my guest today. He is an up-and-coming, already published author. I really think it's only a matter of time before the word gets out about what you're doing. You know, you have a lot of passion for what you're doing, which is the essence of really being able to create something awesome. So you've already released 2 out of the 3 books in this series, which is called Heaven Ride, right? And the third one's coming out before too long.
But, well, we're just getting started on it, because
Yeah.
book 2 just came out a little over a month ago.
Okay, awesome.
So,
And then and you self-published too, which is super awesome. And I didn't tell you we were going to talk about that, but we should probably talk about that too.
yeah. No, actually, I was planning on. I thought that would come up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anyway, thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and jump into it here. Being a writer is challenging. It's maybe not as romantic as a lot of people make it out to be. But what is it that inspired you, or who inspired you to start writing?
The Who is really a collective of people, but I started reading at a very early age. I have an older sister; she's a couple years older, and she wanted to play school teacher. So she helped teach me to read at a very young age, and so I loved books, and so I think reading books is what really inspired me to become a writer. But then along the way, I had some fabulous teachers, and so it was really a lot of my grade school and high school teachers, and
Yeah.
college professors.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So, what is one thing that surprised you most about? There's the idea of what it means to be a writer, and then there's the actual act of writing and creating something. What surprised you most about what you thought it would be versus what it actually is?
Well, okay, so we'll talk about the creative writing aspect, and novel writing, because it's different than some of the other things, journalistic writing
Right.
and other things. You don't have the immediate gratification that you do with journalism, where you publish a story and it's out that day, and
Right.
get feedback and reaction. With a novel, it's pretty much a slow and more plodding process.
Right.
Takes a lot more discipline. I like working off of detailed outlines, so that I can see where I am. I don't always write in order.
Right.
I'll write out of sequence sometimes, but if I have kind of an outline of where I want to go with a particular chapter, then I can, jump in and move right on with it.
Right. So what was there something that was like extra challenging with it, that you were like, man, I had no idea that this is what I was getting into?
I think it's just the the amount of time that it takes. A
Like,
lot
like
of
how long did it take you to write Heaven Ride, your first book?
okay.
Or
So
Heaven Ride?
the first book took 2 years from
Wow.
conception, and actually I'm co-author with my writing partner John Eccleston. John had the initial idea, and he came to me with it, and I just thought it was outstanding, and I said,
Yeah.
I want to be a part of this. So we brainstormed things, and it was even though he had mapped out a really detailed story, there was still a lot of room for collaboration in it, and so then we started writing, and there was a lot of research involved. It's a techno thriller, so there's a degree of science that is the backbone of the genesis of the story,
Right.
and we needed to make sure that scientific part was going to be accurate and people would buy into it. And we figured if people buy the premise of the story, then the rest of it is going to flow
Right.
pretty well, keep people hooked. And so that was the thing. It really, we spent a lot of time doing the research. And then, the other thing, our story, the main characters start out, they're living in San Francisco. I've been to San Francisco once in my life. John has spent a little bit more time there, but I was working off of Google Earth and some of the other, technology and websites and things like that. So keeping the geography straight was a bit of a challenge too.
Yeah.
And then the other part that was a bit of a challenge was John lives in Richmond, Virginia, and I live here in Denver, Colorado. So
Thank God for the internet.
So and we hadn't seen each other in quite a number of years.
Right.
We basically wrote the whole book through email and Skype.
Right.
And then after the book was published, we finally got together here in Denver.
Right. All right. So along those lines, you're creating your book. Tell us a little bit about what the actual trilogy is about, the whole principle. Like, what's the story about?
Okay, so I'm going to start out by asking you a question.
Okay.
Have you ever wondered, or do you believe in heaven, and have you ever wondered what it's like?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So, 93% of all people on Earth believe in heaven in one fashion or another. And so the premise of the story is two super smart guys. One is an expert in science, and the other is an expert in business. And together they come up. They're able to discern secrets of the human soul and a way to create a out-of-body experience so that people travel to heaven and they can bring them back with memories of their trip and without the person having to die first.
That's cool. All right, that's awesome.
So that's Heaven Ride.
Right, that's
in
an
a
interesting.
nutshell.
That's an interesting concept. So let's. What about the self-publishing? There's more people doing that these days. What has that process been like for you? I've often wondered myself what that process is like. Do you think it's better, worse, indifferent? The regular route.
Yeah, and there are pluses and minuses, as there are with most things in life. As we were looking at publishing, we had every intention of going through traditional routes, getting an agent, then a publisher. And John had lived for a period of time. He was in the New York City area, and so he attended a thriller convention where they had agents, and you could pitch agents. And so at this convention, John pitched 10 agents. 9 of them actually requested either the full manuscript or parts of the manuscript, which is an incredible percentage. And then we sent it out to them, and 6 of them got back to us, and they loved the story, but they wanted to make changes to the story. And so we just decided that for that reason, and because of the time involvement, because if you go through a publisher, it can be a year and a half, or 2 years before they actually put the book out.
It's just clunky, it sounds like.
So,
or it can be.
So we decided to self-publish instead, where once we finish the book, it's a pretty easy process. You format it, and then you put it out, and it's, pretty much instantaneous.
Right. You just don't have the backing of a publisher that's pushing it out to outlets and things like that. Maybe.
Correct. Yeah, and distribution, that's the biggest drawback to self-publishing, because you get to keep more of a higher percentage of the royalties from your sales. But the detriment to that is you don't have the publisher who's getting the distribution and your brick and mortar stores. And I'm not going to give any of them any plugs, because they're not selling our books right now.
Right.
But so that was a drawback. And the way that we're working around it is we are approaching some of the independent stores.
Yeah.
Tattered Cover. They carried our book for a while. Then they changed their policy on their local author policy, and now I've heard that they've changed it back.
Oh, okay.
So hopefully now that book 2 is out, we'll be able to get it into some of the independent bookstores.
Right.
But the distribution is the biggest drawback to self-publishing.
Right. So kind of going back to your writing process, a common thing that I hear from other writers is motivation. This book could have easily taken you 10 years to write. You know what I mean? What does your morning routine look like, especially when you're in the middle of writing something and you're trying to get something accomplished? What does your morning routine look like so that you are working on it and you're not just goofing around? Because it's pretty easy to get lost.
Right. Yeah.
And
I said book 1 took 2 years. Book 2 took 5 years.
Really?
And part of that, John has a young growing family, and they're involved in sports and everything else. And for me, right after book 1 came out, I sold a script for a movie. And for a year and a half, I was doing all kinds of rewrites, and it ended up not being produced in the end, but I was delayed with that. So it took us a while to get on track in writing book 2. So things do come up, and you can't beat yourself up when if you fall behind a arbitrary schedule.
Do you have a set, like, I'm going to write from 8 to 11 every morning, or?
I try to do that because I know that great playwright Eugene O'Neill, he kept regular office hours. He worked 9 to 5, and he had an office that he would physically go to, and that was how he handled his writing. And I think that's a good practice, is to consider it a business and set yourself up on a timetable. The other thing that I try to help myself out by pre-planning, when I shut down at night or afternoon or whenever it may be, I try to leave a little thread to kind of let me know where I'm going to be starting out.
So you can pick up and you're not just cold.
And then, right.
That's a good idea.
It's for me, it's a great way to just jog the memory before caffeine kicks in. And then,
right. Yeah, that's actually a really good tip. So, all right, so you were able to kind of make the jump, so to speak, and you've really put yourself into your work. You wrote a script. You're working on a documentary on, I don't know if I'm allowed to share.
Sure.
Documentary on Red Rocks that you're doing. You've got these books. You've taken the jump and you said, you know what, I want to do this, and you've just kind of gone after it. Regardless of any of the consequences, this is what you want to pursue. This is your passion. So, what is your biggest takeaway though from doing this? Like, what have you maybe learned going through this process and taking this jump that you may not have learned otherwise?
Okay, yeah. So before moving out here to Colorado 10 years ago, I had my own business, marketing and advertising, and I had a lot of small business clients that I worked with, and my life was really driven by them, and I felt like I kind of didn't have control anymore. And so when I moved out here, my objective was to kind of just take control of my life, and as a writer, I wanted to write the final chapters of my life and do the things creatively that I had always wanted to do and never had the time.
Right.
And a lot of people fall into that, where you get into whatever whether it's job or family or other commitments, and you forget about the things that you're passionate about and put them off to the side. And I just told myself I need to focus on those things and make that my priority. And I think, if there's any lesson to be learned from that, it's that you can do that, and you can take control. And I think the biggest caveat is to not allow other people's judgment to hold you back. Yeah. Measure yourself with your own yardstick and not by the one that other people put out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Good for you, man. That there's a lot of people that may not have done that, and I'm sure there's a lot of lessons and things like that you get out of that just by taking that jump. You learn things like, hey, I need to measure myself against myself. You know what I mean? And to have that kind of realization is very powerful, and among others, I'm sure. But I think it's great that you've been able to do that. Along those lines, it's not easy. And sometimes you have failures, Is there some kind of failure that you're willing to share that, a lot of people, like, the way I look at failure is it's an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to learn. So the way I pose this question is, do you have a favorite failure of yours, or is there a time where you kind of fell on your face and you're like, well, that sucked, but you know what, this is what I learned from it, and you moved on?
Yeah. So it goes back when I was in college. I studied journalism and had to write a thesis. And so I went to the professor with 5 different ideas for thesis, one at a time, and every one of them got turned down. And meanwhile, the semester was half over, so I hadn't even started my thesis, and I'd just been rejected all this time. So I had a meeting with this particular professor, and in that meeting she said, and it's pretty blunt, she said, "You're nothing but a dreamer." And I was just incredibly insulted by that. I dropped the course, picked it up the next semester with another professor, and got it done. But for the longest time, I just thought that was a supreme insult. And as time has gone on, I've decided that was one of the greatest compliments that anybody has ever paid me. Because, if you have the dream and follow that up with your passion and hard work, then you can achieve things that nobody might have imagined.
Right. Well, and I guarantee you that stuck with you too, because the whole concept behind her comment is, well, you're nothing but a dreamer. That's how you heard it, at least, right?
Yeah.
And now you've partnered that with hard work, dedication, and drive, to actually make something happen, So that's what I love about failing forward, you know what I mean? And being able to take these ideas that make us feel weak and small and turn it into a positive,
right,
to influence our life and better. Good for you, man. That's awesome. All right. So that is it for the hard-hitting questions that I've got for you. All right. Now, I told you we were going to have some rapid-fire questions here.
Yeah, and this seems like the tougher part of the interview
easy.
here.
It's all easy.
Okay.
All right. So if you don't know, just say pass. But they're meant to be just kind of short, quick, off the top of your head, one word, one sentence type of answers. All right. And I won't ask you about another line from a book. I won't put you on the spot like that.
Okay.
All right. So if you didn't have to sleep, what would you do with the extra time? It's 8 hours a day.
Oh, well, there's so much. Right now I'd probably be out somewhere in nature taking photographs because that's
right. There's another passion of yours.
passionate
you
hobby
all the
of mine.
photographs. Yeah, man, you are a champ at getting bald eagles all the time. I see pictures of bald eagles. I think that's so cool. I think they're such a cool animal. And you seem to find them
Yeah,
everywhere.
well, not everywhere, but I've found a couple places where they like to hang out.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. So, what is one thing that you believe that other people think is insane?
Okay, throw this out there, and so that the whole world can think I'm insane. I believe that I can do anything that I set my mind to do.
That's crazy. That is crazy. You heard it here, folks.
Of course, now age is starting to creep into that. There are certain things that I might, hold back on. But I think that if I set my mind to do something, I can get it done.
Absolutely. If you could ask one piece of advice from any historical figure, who would you ask and what would you ask him?
Oh, wow. That is a really fascinating question.
Who's a historical figure that you really look up to?
Okay, so I'm trying to think of what I would ask him, but one of my favorite historical figures is Frederick Douglass. Oh. And I think I would probably ask him what drove him day in and day out, because he faced so many challenges and failures and eventually overcame them. And I would, he's, if I was going to have somebody over for dinner,
yeah,
he'd be the guy.
That'd be an interesting conversation for sure, man. Let me know when you have him over. What books have you given out most as gifts? And you can't do Heaven Ride. Can't be Heaven Ride.
Okay.
Something else.
Let's see. I've there's not like one particular gift. I tend to give out some like self-help type, encouragement type books, but I'm going to change your question a little bit. If I was going to give a book, if I was going to pick a particular author that I would give as a gift, I think it would probably be Mark Twain. Just because he's humorous, there's a lot of insight behind the things that he writes. And, so
there you go. Perfect. That works. All right. If I offer to buy you a plane ticket anywhere in the world, but you had to leave tomorrow, where would you go?
I would go to Ireland.
Yeah?
That would be my dream trip.
Yeah?
Tomorrow, I don't know what the weather's like there. But
I'm sure it's summer. It's nice. It's in the southern hemisphere, right? Right?
No, it is not.
It's not?
No, it is not.
All right,
but regardless, I would love to go to.
Well,
I've got
now
Irish.
Now everybody knows that I'm crazy because I thought Ireland was in the southern hemisphere. So.
And is there going to be a line on underneath that says "Send your contributions to"?
Yes, exactly. Let's send Kerry to Ireland, everybody. Start that GoFundMe page. Well, awesome. Well, Kerry, thank you so much for talking with me today and for sharing about your stories. If somebody wants to find Heaven Ride, where can they go to get it?
Okay, book 1, Sojourn of Souls, and book 2, Blood Red, are both on Amazon.com.
Okay.
And it's available in both an ebook and paperback.
Okay.
And
is there a website where they can get any more information about it, or you or anything, or you guys not have a website?
You can go to kerrygleason.com.
Okay. Perfect. KerryGleason.
Correct.
Right? Nailed it. All right. So if you guys happen to know anybody that you think would be a good fit for the show, I'm always looking for cool people like Kerry to come on and share their stories and enlighten the world. And before you guys go, remember, what is your best opening line for a book of all time? I want to hear it in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you so much for joining me. Kerry, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Have a great day, everybody.